What inspired you to be a journalist?
That's a good question. Well, I've always liked writing. I just really like sitting there and putting my thoughts into words. Um, but I also, it's really good excuse to be nosy. Like there's always loads of questions that you have that you want to ask people. And, in normal life, you can't just ask people how it felt when they did X, Y, or Z. But look at me, I could just ask you any question that I want. And, and sometimes you go and meet, people who are famous or people who are very different from you, and you're just curious about, things. And so what I love, that's my favorite thing about being a journalist, is you just have an excuse to find out about whatever you want.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
My question is, if you want to be like a TV presenter or a journalist, well, me, how did you begin?
How do you begin?
Yeah.
A TV presenter. Well, that's a bit different from what I do, but I think you can study it, and you can, if you set your sights on, so let's say the BBC, you can apply for training there and things. But these days you can sort of, there's YouTube, there's Instagram, there's all sorts of ways that you can practice and get better at it and do it in a sort of small way. And, the thing about all these things is practice makes perfect. I mean, it's not that different from swimming or something. The first time you do it, you're not going to be very good. And it's easy to get shy and think like, oh God, I can't do it. But actually, the more you do it, the better you get. And once you start getting good, then and if you're willing to sort of learn from your mistakes, then that's actually quite a rare thing, and people will want to take a chance on you, I think, if you can learn really well.
And also, you're really lucky, girls, because you live in Manchester, so you've got Media City right on your doorstep to be able to do that when you're older.
Right, yeah, that is good.
Yeah. Do you prefer interviewing adults or kids?
Do you know what? I usually interview adults, to be honest, but I actually find kids more interesting than grown-ups. So I've really enjoyed doing this piece because I've interviewed children from all over the world. Yeah, but you know what? I interview a lot of famous people and then some normal people, and I actually prefer interviewing normal people. I think normal people are generally more interesting.
Yes. Yeah. What is it like to be a journalist for a national newspaper?
Well, it's good. One thing I love about it is, some people go to work and they find it, I'm sure if you ask adults what they do, sometimes the answers you get are quite confusing, and they sort of say, oh, I sort of work in an office and I do, and they can't really necessarily show you what they do. Whereas one thing I love about being a journalist is you have an article and you can show people it and they can see it, and it's in a newspaper. And so it's quite pleasing like that. It's nice to have a sort of a project that you can show people. Not everyone loves journalists, though. Some people think we're kind of nosy and poke on, ask things that shouldn't be asked. So it doesn't always make you popular, but I think it's a useful job.
What's your favorite thing writing about?
Ooh, there's so many things, and it really changes all the time. I've got to say, it's often the last thing that I wrote. But a few weeks ago, I wrote a piece about rats. So it was for the Observer magazine, and I wrote a piece about what rats have been doing during coronavirus. And I just found it really interesting because the rat population they think it's increased by about 50% during the last year, because people are, for all sorts of reasons, but people aren't throwing away their rubbish properly. People have moved home, and so there's lots of rats have moved out of cities and out into where people live. And I learned lots of really interesting facts about rats while I was doing it. So I really enjoyed that. And I'm really enjoying doing this piece because it's just really interesting to one thing that you really want to do as a journalist is find stories that people aren't really telling. You don't want to write the same story as everyone else. And actually, one reason I wanted to do this was because I thought, actually, there's just so many children around the country who are going through a kind of really interesting time, and children don't often get to tell their stories very much. And I thought it would be a really useful thing to do to, just try and get a flavor of what people are missing and what people are maybe enjoying and stuff. So that's been good.